The convict slams his handcuffed fists down on a table and shouts at the two detectives sitting opposite, "I kill kings and presidents first, and next all capitalists." He has no remorse whatsoever for the crimes he's committed. "Give me 100 years," he later screams at a judge. His story involves a dead mayor, an assassination attempt on the president-to-be, and some famous last words: "Push the button. Go ahead, push the button." It was this man, an avowed king killer, a wishful slayer of presidents, that changed everything. He alone was the reason why death row became a thing in the United States. There are about 2,500 people on death row in the US as you watch this. There have been 5 executions so far this year, although some people will have uttered their last words by the time the show comes out. 14 people are scheduled to die before 2021 is over. They are all male. They will all receive a lethal injection. They are mostly from the states of Texas and Oklahoma, and they are a mix of ethnicities. Gone are the days when a person could be convicted and end up on the scaffold or in the death chamber just a few days or weeks later. Combined, the 5 people executed so far in 2021 have served 96 years on death row. So, this brings us back to how death row got started and the fascinating story of Giuseppe Zangara. He was born in Italy on September 1, 1900. He served in the First World War and later immigrated to the USA. He also became the man that very nearly made sure that Franklin D. Roosevelt, often said to be one of the best presidents in US history, never even became president. His parents were peasants living in an area that is the toe on that boot of Italy. His mother believed he was cursed as a kid, mainly because he was born with an ear defect and because he always was having accidents. He was badly injured after falling down some steps. He was burned in a fire. He then fell down more stairs, and he still wasn't yet 8 years old. Young Giuseppe didn't go to school for any length of time because his father made him work in the fields. Life was hard, and his ill-tempered father didn't make it any easier. He didn't really blame his father. His anger focused on the system he and his family were enmeshed in, that of capitalism. And then he arrived in the United States of America, the land of milk and honey, a country where anyone could make it regardless of their class. Well, that's what people were led to believe. Zangara arrived in this land of plenty in 1923, the beginning of the Great Depression, when millions of Americans could barely find enough food to sustain a decent life. On top of that, he had chronic stomach pains. He'd seen doctors about this back in Italy, and the pains were likely the result of his child labor and other maltreatment during his youth. A doctor once turned to his father and said, "This boy will never be any good again." Zangara was angry, in pain, and in the wrong place at the wrong time. America wasn't gonna save a wretch like him. This is what he wrote in his memoir. It sums up his mindset at the time. "The capitalists get to be the boss to my father, keep the money from my father, and my father sent me to work, and I have no school, and I have trouble with my stomach, and that way I make my idea to kill the president, kill any president, any king." He actually tried to assassinate Victor Emmanuel III of Italy back in 1923, but he didn't even get off a shot. He later explained, "The guards got in front of me and I could not get at him because the guards were over 6 feet tall, and I could not even see the king." He discovered again that being short got in the way of being a successful assassin. It was just after his lackluster attempt on someone's life that he applied for a visa to go live in the US. As we said, he was expecting milk and honey, equality for all, vast landscapes of manicured gardens. And once he got off the boat, a pat in the back from Uncle Sam and all those nice natives. Things didn't exactly work out that way. At first he did okay, working as a bricklayer in New Jersey. His constant stomach issues ensured he didn't waste money on booze or gambling. He didn't have many friends and he never dated women. His uncle in the US later condensed his nephew's life, saying he wanted to be left alone to suffer with his stomach. Then came the Great Depression. Work dried up in New Jersey. He traveled to LA to look for another job, hoping the warmer climate might be better for his stomach problem. There was no work there either. He then moved to Miami, where he earned a meager wage as a dishwasher. He ate a meal of scraps once a day, and when he had a few cents to spare, he gambled that on dogs or horses. His American dream had turned into an American nightmare. So he did what anyone would do, sort of, and blamed the president. Sat in his squalid room holding his damn stomach, he made plans to assassinate President Herbert Hoover. Only Hoover was in Washington, D.C. and it was cold there. Then, just as soon as he lamented his delicate disposition, he heard a newsboy shout something below his window. "President-elect Franklin Delano Roosevelt to visit Miami. Read all about it." Zangara clambered out to the street and bought a newspaper. He he learned that Roosevelt would arrive in Miami and later head to Bayfront Park where he would make a speech. Perfect, he thought. If I can't get the current president, I'm going to get the next best thing. Truth be known, he actually quite liked Roosevelt. Still, in his mind, all capitalist politicians deserve to die. A few minutes later, Zangara was in Davis Pawn Shop buying a .32 caliber revolver and 10 bullets. He paid $8. That was pretty much all the money he had in the world, but he wasn't thinking about his future at this point. On February 15, 1933, he put the loaded gun into his pocket and he headed out the door. As he made his way to the park, more than 25,000 other people from all over the U.S. were doing the same. Bands at the park were getting ready to play when Zangara's 5'1" frame tried to squeeze his way through the crowd toward a seat close to where Roosevelt would make his speech on the podium. And he would have gotten closer if it weren't for a Mr. H.L. Edmonds of Ottumwa, Iowa. As he was pushing through the crowd, Edmonds grabbed him and sternly told him that the front seats were for women and children. Zangara didn't argue, resigning himself to a third-row seat and the fact that he would now require good aim. No problem, he thought. He'd shot guns enough in the war. At around 9:30 a.m., Roosevelt made a short speech, after which a group of people shook his hand and had an informal chit-chat with him. One of them was Anton Cermak, the mayor of Chicago. At this point, Zangara was trying his best to get into position, which wasn't easy given he couldn't quite see over the heads of the people much taller than himself. He had no choice but to position himself on a bench, one that wasn't too stable. Then he got his chance, seeing the back of the head of the president-elect. Bang, 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 bang. He fired all 5 shots, each just missing Roosevelt. He did hit someone with each bullet, though, including Mayor Cermak. The bullet entered his chest under his armpit and lodged in his lung. Mrs. Joseph H. Gill took a bullet to the abdomen. 3 others, Mr. Russell Caldwell, Miss Margaret Cruis, and Mr. William J. Sinnott, were also shot, but they all survived. It was nothing short of a miracle that Roosevelt wasn't hit. Later, Lillian Cross and Thomas Armour said they had seen what was happening and managed to push Zangara enough so he couldn't aim directly at Roosevelt. This is debatable, however. Zangara told detectives that the bench he was standing on moved and that's why he'd missed. Had that bench not have wobbled, he was certain he would have found Roosevelt's head. With Roosevelt now under a mass of people trying to protect him, Zangara was wrestled to the ground and arrested. Cops didn't waste much time, thinking the guy would have likely been lynched by the angry crowd. They tied him to the trunk rack of one of the limousines from the motorcade and sped off. The furious crowd ran after it, screaming for the blood of the would-be assassin. From his jail cell, Zangara said his only regret was that he had missed. He told cops that he didn't so much hate Roosevelt, but the fact that he was to become president of the capitalist nation. All the time he was being interviewed, he was clutching his stomach. After 2 psychiatrists visited him, they wrote a report. It stated, his intelligence is not necessarily inferior, his distorted judgment and temperament is incapable of adjustment to the average social standards. He is inherently suspicious and antisocial. Such ill-balanced, erratic types are classified as a psychopathic personality. He might not have been psychopathic. These days, an assessment would more likely have said he had a severe personality disorder, partly a consequence of his traumatic upbringing, made worse by a very painful stomach ailment. Not having work was the final straw, but Zangara was always going to explode at some point. On February 20th, 1933, he pled guilty to 4 counts of assault and an assassination attempt. Judge E.C. Collins handed Zangara 80 years, to which he responded, 4 times 20 is 80. Oh, Judge, don't be stingy, give me 100 years. But then Cermak died from his injuries, so now the sentence was murder under something called transferred intent. He might not have intended to kill Cermak, but under this doctrine, he should have known he might kill someone else while trying to kill his target. This meant his intent was transferred, and so in legal terms, he meant to kill Cermak. Circuit Court Judge Uli Thompson then passed down the death sentence. Zangara didn't seem fazed at all, telling the judge, "You give me electric chair. I know afraid of that chair. You're one of the capitalists. You is crookman too. Put me in electric chair. I no care." Thing was, under Florida law, murderers could not share a cell. This was a problem, because there was already a guy in the death cell waiting execution. The prison had no choice but to build another cell next to it. Hence, the death cell was now death row. Just before Zangara went to the chair, he passed a bunch of notes to prison officials. These were part of his biography. The chaplain then came to calm him down. But Zangara got angry and chased him out of the room, shouting, "Get to hell out of here, you son of a, I go sit down all by myself." We think you can fill in that missing word by yourself. It seems Zangara despised all authority. He sat in the electric chair smiling, but became incensed when he discovered his final moments wouldn't be photographed or filmed. That's when he said, Viva l'Italia! Goodbye to all poor peoples everywhere! Push the button! Go ahead, push the button! No one claimed the body, so he was buried in the prison grounds. What's perhaps surprising is the pathologist said Zangara's brain showed no sign of disease or injury, and neither did his stomach. By this time, Roosevelt was already sworn in as president. He would be re-elected for 3 more terms. The US and even the world might have been a different place today if little Giuseppe Zangara had been just a few inches taller. Now you need to watch Insane But True Story of a Real-Life Assassin, or have a look at America's Deadliest Hitman, the Iceman Killer.